Facing a monstrous creature, he asks himself why he did it. Why did it have to be him to endure all of this? And what if it was just because he was considered weak as he's struck by the creature? The protagonist asks who decided he was weak and would be obediently defeated. And just then, a system merges with an unknown life form. His shadow system had been activated. Back in the past, the protagonist's name is Lai Yi. He's an experienced agent from another dimension, risking his life every day to collect energy stones. A man with a tablet says Li Yi did well this month and would be able to pay off his parents' debt in a year. Maybe if he keeps this up for another 3 or 5 years, he could buy a small apartment, and the protagonist says he will keep working hard. He thinks his boss is heartless and that once he pays off his debt, he'll get out of there. The radiation from other dimensions had a 1 in 1,000 chance of awakening a normal person into an advanced one, but the process was extremely dangerous. If you didn't risk your own life, no one would choose this job. In the car, some people are talking about the protagonist who lost his parents in a car accident 3 years ago. Not only did he get no compensation, but he was also left with debt. Another colleague says that this year the NG group insisted his parents caused $1 million in losses. His friend replies that he's vulnerable and will do anything the company wants to pay it off. They continue discussing that they'd have to pay with their own runs, but they were already at their limit. Lai Yi mentally repeats the word weak. Sometimes a person becomes vulnerable not because of themselves, but because society has become chaotic. The team leader tells everyone to get ready as it's time to start work. Suddenly, the ground starts to shake from side to side. A colleague says it's just a small earthquake, and his friend comments that he's never heard of an earthquake in another dimension. They've worked in many dimensional zones, but have never heard of this. They wonder if it could be monsters appearing, then they shouldn't work here anymore. He heard this place was used by creatures, and it would be hard to deal with insects or beasts. But the boss tells everyone to shut up because the zone was cleared by the advanced 3 years ago, and there's no way they could appear. They shouldn't keep talking nonsense, until suddenly the boss is struck by the creature. The other subordinates scream that their supervisor has been taken down. Li Yi is terrified, facing the monster. Then, one of the team members yells that it's an unknown creature. The creatures chase after the team members. Lai Yi thinks they are about 10 kilometers away from the dimensional rift. He wonders if running would even help. The situation was completely beyond what human strength could handle, until someone hits him from behind, making him lose his balance. They both crash into a large rock. Li Yi falls to the ground, struggling to breathe from the impact. His colleagues shout to start the car and get going. Li Yi begs them to take him with them, reaching out his hand, until a creature appears above the truck. It reaches the vehicle and captures the 2 men, who scream for help. Other creatures advance toward the damaged car. Suddenly, an explosion erupts and hits the creatures. Li Yi is surprised as the creatures retreat from the fire. He wonders if this is their weakness, and if it's worth a try. One of the monsters charges toward him, and the protagonist thinks he needs to act now. He heads toward a torch. He grabs it and manages to slide across the ground. Li Yi swings the torch from side to side, making the creature back away. He thinks it's just as he imagined, with the monsters paralyzed by fear. Then, he tells everyone to listen up because these things are afraid of fire. 2 years ago, portals appeared all over the world. Insects, beasts, and creatures from other dimensions began to invade Earth. Only the advanced, awakened by radiation, had the power to fight back. This not only stopped the portal's advance, but also opened an era of exploration and development. Unfortunately, they aren't advanced. They are just normal people, merely surviving in this world with everything they've got. Facing the portal monsters, they don't even have the strength to run, as Lai Yi yells for everyone to grab as much flammable material as they can. A man says the torch doesn't look like it will last long. Li Yi tells them to go to the stockroom because there's gasoline there. If they block the entrance with fire, they can hold out until rescue arrives. Then, he tells everyone to form a circle and retreat slowly. The squad members manage to follow his orders while the monsters remain still. Li Yi tells him to pour the gasoline at the entrance, and the man understands. He tips over the bucket, consequently spilling it all on the ground. Then, the squad members throw their torches toward the gasoline. Upon contact, one of the creatures is engulfed in flames and stopped in its tracks. A colleague touches the protagonist's shoulder, thanking him. They would all be in trouble if it weren't for him. Another colleague agrees, saying if anything happened, he'd help his friend. Li Yi suddenly notices something. A statue standing there. His colleague replies that it was discovered a long time ago in the mines, and Supervisor Wang probably wanted to sell it on the black market. Li Yi says it looks a bit ancient, as a radio calls for Sector 7 to respond if they copy the message. A man replies that they are under attack by creatures and need immediate rescue. The radio just says they received that message earlier and that rescue would arrive in 2 hours. Everyone in the squad begs them to hurry, but there's no response. They wonder what to do, as their suits would only last for an hour and a half. It's better to wait here than to try and escape. Li Yi thinks for a moment and looks at the 61% charge on his wrist, thinking there isn't much power left in the suit. A man asks everyone to stop for a second and listen to him, because their suits won't last more than an hour, and in this situation, someone will have to take a big risk, like the older guys or even the orphans. Then he points at Lai Yi. He has no one and is still full of debt, so his situation is tough. He tells Li Yi to give him his suit's battery, while the protagonist gets angry. That man confronts and shoves him, asking how he can try to resist if he doesn't have the strength for it. He challenges him to show how he'll fight back, as the protagonist feels pain in his injured arm. He says Lai Yi should expose himself to the radiation to awaken. If that happens, he'll become the hero who saves everyone. Lai Yi tries to get his mask back, saying that if he awakens, the first thing he'll do is confront him. Those men say it's a 1 in 1,000 chance and that he's not that lucky, as they remove the battery. Then, they approach the other people, asking who's next to try and awaken. A man shoves his friends, telling them to take their batteries, not his. Then, he runs toward the truck as the men tell him to stop. That guy says that if everyone is in danger, they should face it together. As he does, the statue on top of the car becomes unbalanced. It falls to the ground while his colleagues shout that they must stop that guy. If he breaks the fire barricades at the entrance, they'll all be doomed. The man actually manages to break through the fire barrier and the creatures advance on the group while Li Yi remains on the ground. He wonders if the statue is laughing, as even it seems to be mocking him with a strange expression on its face. Suddenly, one of the creatures steps on the statue. Li Yi tries to get up and wonders why. Why did it have to be him to endure all of this? And what if all of this was because he was considered weak? He remembers people criticizing him for losing his parents and saying he should just pay his debt. He was even evicted, and when he asked the group's owner to investigate how his parents died, he was almost fired. The boss told him to look at some letters. They had all ended up in his hands, and all he wanted was the truth. The truth, according to the boss, was that his parents had violated procedures and caused the accident, so he wouldn't be compensated since the company lost millions. The loan shark kicks him, telling him he'd be better off signing the compensation contract and taking the 10,000 than to insist on knowing the truth. His debt was now under the loan shark's management. It was a 30,000 monthly fee for 3 years, and they'd send someone to collect every month. He looked so miserable that the loan shark decided to show him a way to pay off the debt by becoming a dimensional miner. Li Yi thought to himself that even if he died, he wouldn't make it easy for the monster. He wondered why he was such a weakling, just accepting his fate. He bit down on the creature's shoulder. It hurled him across the room. Lai Yi thought it had a truly agonizing stench. He entered a trance. A figure asked if he would unleash his hidden potential or become useless before he died. Li Yi said that at least he tried, but he was just a shattered statue, amounting to nothing. The statue replied that it was the only one who could save him now. He just had to obediently surrender his body. The protagonist said he wasn't interested. He'd rather die than be controlled by something like it. Then the statue asked if he would leave with his pride intact, and did he really think he had the right to refuse? The shadow system activated. Suddenly, the monster was engulfed in shadows, forcing it to its knees, slamming it to the ground. Li Yi, now in shadow armor, said, "So this little ant is the one who stepped on my statue." He crushed it immediately, adding that he holds a grudge. Another monster tried to attack him from behind. Lai Yi turned, saying it was too noisy. He released more shadows, commanding, "You will kneel too." The beast screamed, trying to fight being forced to the ground, but it was defeated in seconds. The spirit commented that the stench was truly awful, but now it was time to deal with the rest of the trash. The men asked what Li Yi was going to do, threatening to report him if he laid a finger on them. The spirit released its energy, saying it was curious to see what the protagonist would do if he got his body back. The men begged to be let go, saying they were just trying to survive and that he couldn't do this to them. Besides, if it weren't for them, the protagonist wouldn't have known how to become an advanced. Even though they were harsh, it worked. Li Yi asked what he should do now. Was he supposed to thank them? The men told him there was no need for that. He should just let them go and pretend nothing happened. The protagonist released more shadows, saying he wouldn't just let them go. He was going to give them a hand. The shadows ripped the visors from one of the men's faces. They all immediately started spitting and screaming the protagonist's name. Li Yi walked toward the others, who begged him not to take their lives, claiming they had done nothing. The protagonist tossed the batteries, saying they were theirs now. Then the spirit told him to spare his useless pity. It would only get him into trouble. Li Yi told it to shut up. He didn't need it nagging him. The spirit replied that it wanted to see how he'd act when he was on the verge of death. Outside, dozens of aliens were ready to attack. Lai Yi said he didn't expect so many of them. The spirit told him to either give it control of his body or deal with them himself. He was already getting weak-kneed just from this trash. Without its power, he was nothing. The protagonist said he'd told it before to stop being a nuisance, as he leaped behind one of the creatures. He dodged the strike, but the monster turned and charged again. Lai Yi defended himself against its grab, but another creature appeared behind him, ready to strike. The protagonist turned and managed to get away for a second. Then he remarked that his reaction speed and dexterity had greatly improved. Another creature charged, and the spirit taunted that even after awakening the shadow system, this was all he had. It was completely pathetic. Li readied his fist and struck the creature, telling the spirit to shut its mouth. He wondered why his power had increased so much. His physical attacks couldn't damage the monster. He wondered what would happen if he had a weapon. That's when he noticed a shadow dagger. He decided to see how it fit in his hand, settling into a fighting stance. With a simple lunge, Li Yi made a clean cut with the dagger. He thought, this is it. Now he could finally kill these aliens. He wondered if he had already become an advanced. Another creature struck his shoulder, but the protagonist retaliated with a swing of his dagger. He pushed forward, thinking he finally had the power to fight back. Surrounded by the bodies of several creatures, the protagonist took a deep breath. He had managed to defeat all those monsters, and the system notified him that he had successfully advanced, becoming an E-rank human. Later, at the hospital, a nurse noted he had no wounds and his vitals were normal, but he wouldn't wake up. The doctor explained that he was just adapting. The nurse asked what rank he was. The doctor replied they would wait for him to wake up to discuss it. They decided to move on to the next room, but the nurse wanted to stay and watch a bit longer, thinking he was handsome. The spirit appeared, scoffing that this low-born human was still E rank. With his awakened strength, he should have been S or A rank, yet he still managed to awaken the system. Li Yi woke up and asked what exactly this thing was, as it kept getting closer to him. The spirit replied that it was the supreme elder of the entropic clan, ruler of all dimensions. It commanded him to offer up his body so it could avenge a betrayal. Li Yi thought he'd never heard of such crap. He wasn't about to give his body to some ugly, dark entity. The spirit wondered how this mere human dared to refuse. There was no need for more talk. Its purpose was the only value this body had. The protagonist told it to wait a second. He figured it was after his good looks, and that this might be a possession. He wondered if he should prove his willpower to make it give up, but had no idea what on earth he should do. The spirit told him to stop, questioning what all this nonsense was about, to think it had to stoop to possessing an E-class human. If things had been better, it would have chosen an old dog over him. It created a portal and told him he had 3 days. If he didn't reach D-class by then, he would be completely erased. Li Yi got up, asking where he was since it didn't look like the hospital. The spirit replied they were inside its clan's testing dimension. The insect nest. Every member of the King Tian race can only leave when they come of age. Li Yi realized it had been testing him ever since it possessed him. He came face to face with a carapace shield beetle. He wondered how he recognized the species, and the spirit explained it was from the Dark Systems database. Li Yi gripped his dagger tightly, pondering this. The beetle attacked, moving from side to side with immense speed. The protagonist tried to match its movements with his dagger. The creature lunged forward to bite, and Li Yi noticed a blind spot right behind it. He struck its carapace and got behind the monster. The beetle struck the dagger with its legs. Li Yi used the weapon as a brace to keep from being pushed back. The protagonist noticed the terrible smell as the spirit said his efforts were useless. Brute force was his only strategy. Li Yi charged, yelling that how he fights is none of its business. The spirit retorted that if he lost, he shouldn't come begging for help. Li Yi kept attacking, wondering if the damned insect had a weak spot. The creature kept striking with its carapace. Then it swept horizontally, and the protagonist tried to jump over it, but he was thrown against the wall. The spirit called him an E-class weakling. Just then, the protagonist noticed a green liquid on his arm. It had come from one of the monster's legs. He wondered if it was blood. Then, smiles spread across his face as he realized he'd found the monster's weakness. The creature charged again. Li Yi blocked it with his dagger, intending to confirm its real weakness. Suddenly, the ruler noticed the Eye of Shadows. Li Yi made several more cuts with his dagger, severing the insect's legs. The spirit asked what the point was of injuring just one leg after all that effort. Li Yi replied that without its front leg, it was easier to hit its weak spot, and the ruler asks about it. Li Yi grips the dagger tightly, thinking he needs a more effective weapon. He forges his spear simply by molding his shadows. He then aims for the shelled insect's abdomen. He explains that the reason the insect was vulnerable was because its weak spot was its abdomen. And with this information, he neutralizes the monster. Li Yi pants, saying he won, and the ruler comments that he got this winded after defeating a simple E-rank monster. The protagonist picks up the crystal on the ground and asks why he feels such great power, while his spirit replies that it's an energy stone that improves his level. Suddenly, Li Yi senses something approaching, but he can't see anything. The ruler suggests he use his shadow eyes, and the protagonist questions what kind of skill that is. He replies that he just needs to gather the shadow energy in his eyes and activate the skill as soon as he can. Li Yi manages to use the skill at level 1. With it, he sees an insect hurling several spikes in his direction. The protagonist dodges, seeing that as soon as the spikes embed themselves in a wall, mold appears. He comments that the attack was fast and wonders why these creatures are attacking him. He prepares to dodge again and starts performing acrobatics. Li Yi says the Shadow Eye ability isn't working well and wants to know why he can't see clearly, while the ruler responds that he's still too weak. In that case, the protagonist decides he'll put more energy into it. The spirit thinks that it's getting interesting, with an E rank being able to skillfully manipulate shadow energy. The protagonist comments that it's the Digger, and it specializes in long-range attacks with toxins. Then he starts to complain about the number of opponents. The spirit says that when you see one of these creatures, it means there are many of them in the darkness. The creatures advance toward the protagonist. The spirit says he's not bad at finding positions and dodging attacks from all sides. Li Yi separates his dagger into 2 and tells everyone to back off, releasing a large amount of shadow energy. His spirit comments that he has already awakened the second phase of the Shadow Eye. For a mere E rank, this was a huge surprise, with his pupil becoming darker and every enemy movement becoming an opportunity for a decisive blow. Li Yi thinks that all the insect's movements seemed slower, as if they were at half speed. Even the purple color could be the monster's weakness, and the spirit comments that it's good the Shadow Eye reached the second stage. After identifying their weak spot, attacks can break their defenses, and Li Yi comments that they all have weak spots underneath. Then he touches the ground using the Shadow Thorn in a variation called the Great Boreal, which deals area damage with shadows. His crystals accumulate, and the protagonist thinks that each defeated monster only gives 0.7% progress toward reaching D rank. Since he discovered their weak spots, he would do it quickly. Charging at each creature and landing swift blows, he thinks that his level 2 Shadow Eye has increased his attack power. He dodges a monster and asks what that was, and the spirit comments it's a pity his brain can't keep up with his reaction. The protagonist thinks that he saw it clearly and it was a saber larva. His spirit notes that he transformed the dagger into a whip, and the protagonist immediately traps the monster. He defeats the creature, and the system registers the monster's weak point. The diggers fire more poisonous shots at the young man. Li Yi says they seem to enjoy this, and that they'll see if they can attack without their source, advancing with the dual daggers. After defeating another monster, his progress reaches 12%, and he then knocks all the monsters to the ground with his whips. The spirit comments that he's starting to look worthy, even if his stance is a bit awkward. A benefit granted by the Shadow Eyes was the improvement of his senses, reactions, strength, and control over shadows. At the same time, it consumes immense mental power, and that was the price to be paid. An E rank was still an E rank, and this seemed to be the protagonist's limit, as his vision started to blur. He thinks he finally has the power to seek justice, just as he's hit by an insect. Li Yi prepares to fight despite the 15-minute time remaining warning, because he cannot fail here. The NG group would pay for trying to cover up the truth about what happened to his parents and even forcing him to pay a debt. Li Yi continues to neutralize the monsters, reaching 94% progression, thinking that now he has the power to change everything and cannot give up. He would make every single one of those arrogant individuals face justice. Standing amidst the defeated monsters, he thinks he will make them show respect for his parents' memory, and thus reached 95.4% progression. The spirit comments that this human is surprisingly compatible with the shadow system, and that he even nurtures the energy. But it warns that the promised time is running out and he should hurry, with more monsters approaching and Li Yi reaching 97% progression. His spirit comments that his plan is to release all the shadow energy at once, and the protagonist says he's close to advancing and that if he can get stronger, he will use everything he has. Thus, he unleashes all his power as the timer hits 0. Li Yi charges forward with his sword. The protagonist manages to reach D rank as soon as he finishes his attack. He breathes heavily, and the ruler comments that he barely made it, but now he can be called a low-level D rank. The protagonist turns around. He notices a weapon on the ground, while the ruler comments that the insects were a starting field for him, and that this dagger, using human ranking, is A rank. Li Yi says it's a great sword and asks if they are giants. His ruler replies that compared to his shadow power, these weapons are nothing, and begins to absorb more daggers. He questions if the protagonist would use the weapon in another way, and Li Yi replies that he's going to sell it. But only D-level advanced can sell equipment, so they go to the registration hall. At the registration hall, he is surprised to be classified as E rank and asks how this could be. The secretary says that even though his physical stats are good, there was no detectable energy. The records show that he is a registered minor, and an E-level advance gets a 15% pay raise. Li Yi walks around saying the shadow system was unparalleled, and the ruler comments that it's because humans can't detect shadows. The protagonist notes that this could be a good thing, but it makes selling equipment a bit more difficult. In the black market, all sorts of deals happen, and the ruler comments that this seemed perfect for the shadow system. Some people comment on a cloak that absorbs air and even smell. The ruler remarks that humans are peculiar, giving a few gems and a piece of metal to call it a divine weapon, and he pities them. A man asks why a miner is there and says that if it's something of low value, he can't afford it. Li Yi asks if this is how they treat customers, and the man says he looks like he has no resources, so he won't make an effort. The protagonist says he's not interested in his items and brought his own item to see how much it's worth, showing the sword. A girl says that Huo is a D rank advanced. She wanted to know why he brought her to a place like this. The attendant asks if Master Zhuo has anything good to sell today, and Huo says he got a good sword and is going to sell it to buy a car for Su King. That attendant exclaims that it's a wind sword that enhances attack power on its own, but the protagonist is able to recognize Su King. She had rejected him because he couldn't get a large compensation sum and told him he'd better stop trying to get close to her. Huo asks if she knows him, and Su King plays dumb, saying she's an online celebrity and he's just a fan. Then her boyfriend approaches, saying common people should keep walking, and that his presence there doesn't make the place worthy. He says this low-class person should hurry up and leave. Advancing with the wind sword, Huo tries to strike the protagonist's sword, but his inferior sword shatters instantly, and he wonders how that was possible. The protagonist says it really seems his sword was low quality. Su King questions how that happened, and he says his sword can cut through iron and is also worth a lot. Huo advances, releasing his powers and asking if the young man wants a serious fight. Li Yi dodges, thinking he's too slow. That awakened one says he has some interesting skills. Then, he plants his foot on the ground and releases more energy. He unleashes several kicks that the protagonist dodges with ease. He thinks the attacks were slower than the tests in the insect nest. Huo wonders if this was just a miner who wasn't even E rank. He attacks once more, wondering why he can't beat him, even as a D rank. Li Yi uses his shadows on the man's wrist. The man lunges forward, saying the miner should go back to his mine. Li Yi asks why certain creatures don't go back where they belong. He then pulls him down, slamming him to the ground. Su King walks over to her companion. The protagonist notes that Mr. Zhu seemed to be some kind of lackey. The awakened one charges at Li Yi, asking if he's looking for trouble. That is, until someone named Wang arrives and tells everyone to stop. Even if Mr. Zhuo's a long-time client, fighting in his shop is off limits. Su King yells that the miner broke young Master Zhao's treasure, and that's why they acted. Wang wonders if he is a miner. He approaches, asking if Zhao's weapon was really broken by the sword in his hand. Li Yi says he attacked first, so if his sword breaks, it has nothing to do with him. Zhuo questions if that's really the case. Wang says the sword doesn't look normal, and Huo adds that the money goes to him and the item to the boss. Then the boss approaches the protagonist, stating he'll act as a mediator. He asks to take a look at the sword in his hand first. Suddenly feeling a pressure, he notes the sword is very heavy, yet the protagonist lifted it easily. He decides it's best to test his limits. He asks where a miner got a weapon like this. Lai Yi asks since when the black market started checking identities and the origin of items. Wang says he was just curious, but if he doesn't want to talk, that's fine. The protagonist replies that he had nothing better to do and found the sword while mining. Wang thinks to himself that he really is just a lowly miner. Then, he says the sword is indeed strong, but it has no attributes and is only worth a few hundred. If Zhuo's sword hadn't been broken, it would be worth 2 million. He offers to buy his sword, but in exchange, he must compensate young Master Zhao with 2 million. He should consider it his lucky day and asks what Zhu thinks. The young master replies that it's fine and they can proceed. Su King asks how a miner is supposed to cover those costs. Huo tells her not to worry as he'll find a way to cover the amount. Li Yi replies that they should be sure they've thought this all through, because there's a big problem and it's not just with him. He then unleashes a great energy. The guards advance toward the protagonist. Wang advises that it's a pointless fight not worth his time, and they should go to the tea room to wait until one of the guards hits the wall a moment later. The boss yells for Ah Biao to be careful, because if he breaks the merchandise, he won't be able to pay for it. Lai Yi neutralizes 2 more subordinates coming at him. Huo observes the figure near him and counters with a strike, saying the miner seems strong. The protagonist turns to him and says it's his turn. Su King questions how a miner got so good at fighting, and Huo says he'll admit he's not bad. But in front of a D-rank awakened, he's nothing. He then rushes towards the protagonist. Lai Yi easily dodges and transforms his hand into shadows, striking him with a single blow. He becomes enraged, saying not even his father has done that to him and that he'll finish him for good, firing a bolt of lightning. The protagonist blocks it with ease, creating a purple barrier. Huo asks what just happened, as it was like an invisible wall. The protagonist says that since he's never learned his lesson, he'll teach it to him himself. Su King questions how he dares to lose to a miner. Li Yi uses spider web ability made of shadows, and the girl asks what's happening. Huo says he's no miner and must be a C or B rank ascended. The protagonist replies that he's an E rank miner certified by the guild. Huo then mutters that it's impossible. Then he tells the protagonist to wait because he's with the Black Panther gang, and confronting him means going against Brother Panther. The protagonist repeats that they're the debt collectors, his expression turning grim. Then he starts striking Huo while talking about the Black Panthers and Brother Panther. Finally, he throws the young man against the wall. Huo is defeated, and the protagonist adds that the thing he hates most are those who take advantage of others with unfair collections. Wang runs up from behind and tells the protagonist to disappear. Li Yi simply turns and emanates his energy, sending him flying. Huo shouts that it was a misunderstanding and that he has 100,000 right there, so they should just be friends and forget what happened today. The protagonist says his offense will cost him dearly. Huo begs him to stop, offering $1 million to compensate. Li Yi lifts him up, saying he likes to charge interest, so he'll apply his own fees, where 5 penalties would cost much more. Huo hands over his card, saying it's 5 million and it's all he has. Li Yi recognizes it as the NG Group's VIP card. He realizes this guy is one of the debt collectors who forces people to mine. In that case, he'll let him face his own consequences. The protagonist lets him go, replying that the Black Panthers took a few million from him a few years ago, and he should just consider the money returned to its rightful owner. Su King asks if the young man is okay and wants to know how he got so strong all of a sudden. Huo scolds her harshly, saying that if she hadn't said he was a miner, he wouldn't have let his guard down and been caught by surprise. Meanwhile, he thinks that his money isn't so easily taken. He says they should just wait and see, making a call to another man elsewhere. Huo begs Brother Panther for help, claiming someone stole the sword he was going to give as a gift and threatened the gang. Panther asks for the man's information. An associate says they got the targets and asks about the others, while Panther questions if there are any more there. The man creates some threads and says of course not. He neutralizes his targets with ease using his threads, while Panther mentions that Huo was dealing with a strong guy, but frankly, he didn't care. At the Adventurers Guild, a man asks if the protagonist needs any help. Li Yi says he's an E-rank adventurer and wants to see if there are any missions he can take. Other adventurers comment that this rookie came to the wrong area and that the lowest level mission is D-rank. An E-rank daring to speak so loudly is considered a burden to others. The secretary tells him to just leave as E-ranks wait on the side where a team might recruit them. Li Yi thinks that the 5 million he got was immediately taken by collectors and that his priority now is to get a mission. Suddenly, someone arrives and everyone feels an immense pressure. They They comment that it's someone who is at least B rank and that they can't even take a step toward her. The woman continues to walk through the area. The protagonist remains unaffected, while people wonder why a B rank came here. Li Yi notices she radiates a powerful energy but looks like a delicate girl. He doesn't sense any hostile intent, which seems like a contradiction. A masked man comments that the D rank abyss beasts require an adventurer to work as a miner, and asks if anyone is interested. People comment that the guy is E rank but didn't react under that aura, while their own knees are shaking. Li Yi thinks that he's been noticed. The B rank reflects that this guy is a miner and is perfectly fine under her pressure. Meanwhile, the guild secretary says he has plenty of D ranks to show her. Lady Qin Xin Yi refuses, saying she wants the protagonist. The secretary says he arrived late and isn't registered, so it's against the rules. But Qin Xin Yi replies that she is the rules, releasing her intimidating aura. The masked man opens the door for the lady, and the secretary thinks it's the first time he's seen Miss Qin Xin Yi recruit someone personally. Inside the dungeon, the adventurers are fighting a creature. A bard plays his flute, and the protagonist thinks that this is a team of support, of frontline, and DPS. These Minotaurs don't stand a chance against this group. They have good teamwork too. Must be a B-rank group, and everyone seems to get along well. Li Yi activates his Eye of Shadows. He thinks the Minotaurs below them are clearly above D rank, but no one else seems to sense it. The ruler replies that his eye has reached level 2, making his perception much better than theirs. Meanwhile, Li Yi thinks Qin Xin Yi must have noticed. Maybe she even knows, but is staying quiet on purpose for some reason. The bard tells the young lady that according to their intel, the vein of crystalline light she's looking for is inside. Qin Xin Yi asks the miner to go with her. The protagonist thinks she knows it's dangerous, but still wants to take him along. This dangerous aura keeps getting stronger. Maybe this woman doesn't care about the risk to her subordinates, or maybe she's strong enough to protect everyone. As they take the next step, a hole opens up and they begin to fall. The protagonist and Miss Qin Xin Yi manage to land on their feet. Li Yi notices something, coming face to face with a D-rank Minotaur creature. He thinks the B-level Ascended is about to make a move as Qin Xin Yi draws her sword. She releases some energy while looking at the monster, but a drop of sweat soon trickles down her face. Then she says the miner will go since she'll just cover him. The protagonist replies that he's just a miner. She blushes and falls to the ground, saying she doesn't care and wants to get out. Meanwhile, the protagonist thinks he's only earning a miner's fee and it's not worth it. Qin Xin Yi shouts that she'll give him 1,000,000, so he must go and get her away from this. The protagonist replies that with that kind of money, he reluctantly accepts, summoning his dagger and saying it's time to move. The Minotaurs charge toward the protagonist. He tries to defend against the blows as the monsters rush in. They were all heading for the girl, and Li Yi thinks about the 1,000,000. She repels them all by creating a barrier with her reddish energy. Li Yi notes that she made her move after all, and it seems he was overthinking things earlier. A Minotaur leaps to attack the girl. The protagonist pulls a longsword from a portal and makes a move that repels the Minotaur. He calls out to Miss Qin Xin Yi, but she runs off, saying she'll leave the monsters to him. The protagonist continues to fight the monsters, saying he can't do anything about her. Qin Xin Yi runs as far as she can and says it should be safe here. Just as a monster appears behind her, she turns around and asks why it wasn't afraid of her. The Minotaur readies its weapon and tries to attack her. Li Yi reflects that it's strange. She clearly has the ability to fight back, but she's just terrified instead. The girl reveals a silver bracelet with a red jewel on her arm. She releases the barrier once more, throwing the Minotaur far away. Immediately after, her artifact shatters. The protagonist realizes it was a protective item and that her earlier attack wasn't her actual strength. Questioning if she's a non-combat type Ascended, the girl confirms with a sound, but she says he'd better keep it a secret after they get out. The protagonist replies that it'll cost extra. He faces all the monsters, wondering why they are all focusing only on her. The protagonist activates his Shadow Eye. He thinks that it currently marks one's presence. It's no surprise they didn't sense him first, as the Minotaurs were being influenced by strange fluctuations. The Minotaur attacks again, and Qin Xin Yi calls for the miner. Li Yi makes a swift move, saying it's a never-ending problem. He thinks that more Minotaurs are coming. He can't use his skills for fear of hitting the girl, so if he doesn't get out soon, he'll wear himself out. If the target of these opponents is Qin Xin Yi, then he would use this against them and give it to the girl, releasing the chains from his feet. He warns her to activate her protective artifacts, since she's not a combat type and needs to be careful not to get ambushed. Qin Xin Yi asks who told him to say that so loudly. Someone approaches from behind the girl. He thinks that a mere miner almost ruined his plan, but a non-combat type Ascended with no protective gear left would be easily defeated. Then he tells her to blame her father for this. He tries to attack, but his move is intercepted by the protagonist. The bard is surprised by this. Li Yi says he used sound to control the Minotaurs and attack her, while the girl shouts that it's Luden. The man says he fell into the hands of a miner and was truly careless, but he shouldn't think he's won yet, as he releases more energy. The Minotaurs then begin to rise. He forms a Minotaur aura with the absorbed energy, saying he'll show how formidable a control type Ascended is. Lai Yi shouts that the aura must be C rank, and Qin Xin Yi says Luden is absorbing the Minotaurs to force an enhancement. Suddenly, the ground turns to lava. The girl asks if he's turning into a C-class lava Minotaur. The protagonist thinks this strategy is getting out of control and feels he's at a disadvantage. They were both D-class against a lava Minotaur bordering on C level. The monster attacks and the protagonist tries to defend with his sword. He creates a barrier and Qin Xin Yi takes shelter near him. An explosion erupts and hits them both, forcing them back. The protagonist thinks so this is the destructive power of a C rank, and there were only two of them to deal with this force. The girl comments that he's injured. That lava Minotaur readies its axe once more to strike them. The protagonist grabs the girl's hand. He rushes forward, telling her to hold on for a second. She gets close to the axe and screams in fear, but the protagonist creates a shadow whip to hold the Minotaur. The girl questions if he has a control type ability too. Li Yi says he can't hold it, so the girl must run as fast as she can. He tells her to listen. Once she's in the labyrinth, she must keep running as fast as possible. She asks about him, wondering if he won't come with her. The protagonist replies that he has to hold it back to buy time, and she calls out for the miner. Lai Yi tells her to hide, saying he'll come for her soon. He thinks that, after all, she was still his $1 million investment. The lava Minotaur roars in fury at the protagonist, wanting to know where they went. Li Yi appears behind it and asks if it's looking for someone. Luden swings his axe around to attack, asking where Qin Xian is. He strikes the ground, and the protagonist appears at his back, suggesting he guess. He hits his back, but the guy notices something. Even the cracks in the rocks weren't affected. The Minotaur laughs, questioning his tactic of trying to pierce rock with a dagger. Lai Yi dodges, thinking that a large area of lava was a bit difficult to handle. He needs to lure the monster into an open area first. The Minotaur yells that he's like a rat. Running is the only thing he can do. The protagonist stops in front of him. He activates his dark sense, thinking that no matter how strong the opponent is, he always has a weak point. The Minotaur says that once he defeats him, he'll find that woman. He attempts a headbutt to defeat his opponent once and for all. The protagonist thinks he's found the weak spot on its back. Li Yi dashes forward, moving his dagger from side to side. Then he notices something different. The Minotaur turns, asking if he really thinks it doesn't know what he's planning. In the face of absolute power, all his tricks were futile. The protagonist, now against the wall, thinks that's too much power and wonders how a C rank is capable of that. Luden charges at him, saying he'll see where he runs this time. Li Yi grips his dagger, saying he'll wait for the right moment. He makes several moves with the dagger, while the Minotaur asks if he's seriously trying to do any damage with it. That useless piece of metal wouldn't even make a scratch. The protagonist realizes his chance will be when it attacks again. Then he appears behind the monster, aiming for the large fire core on its back. But then something surprising happens. He notices it's extremely hot, and even his shadow energy can't completely block the sensation. He backs away, commenting that the Minotaur is stronger than he thought, realizing this opponent is tougher than he imagined. The Minotaur turns, saying he doesn't know how he figured it out, but it seems he's found its weak spot. This was bad. It wouldn't help that the temperature was scorching. He demands to know where Cyan is, offering to spare him in return. Li Yi replies that a traitor who sold out has shown his true colors. He asks if the Minotaur really thinks he believes someone like him. The Minotaur becomes enraged, saying he seems to be asking for a beating. The monster swings its axe and says that if he has any guts, he should stop dodging. Li Yi shapes his shadow into a chain blade and hurls it toward the creature. Luden dodges, and the protagonist remarks that he shouldn't be doing that either. Thinking this is his chance, he changes his shadow into a rope dart. The shadows then close in on the fire and collide, but they are neutralized with extreme ease. The Minotaur swings its weapon, saying it's useless. The protagonist thinks about how much discomfort that caused. He then dodges another axe swing. Li Yi thinks that he's burning through too much shadow energy, which is dangerous. It seems he has no choice but to ask King Tian for help, but he dismisses that idea, leaping over the Minotaur's arms while declaring that even if he's defeated, he won't let him control his body again. Besides, if he defeats this C rank, he'll gain a ton of experience, and he can't pass that up. He closes in on the Minotaur's weak spot with his shadow dagger. The protagonist thinks he won't be able to break through. Even as the heat engulfs his body, he keeps moving forward. Li Yi starts striking the core, and the Minotaur screams, activating its berserker mode. It jerks its back, throwing the protagonist away. The young man wonders why it suddenly went berserk. Li Yi collides with the wall. He realizes its attacks have a burn effect. The Minotaur says that the miner forced it to do this, but this was the end. Then, the protagonist feels something. He wonders why he feels a more powerful energy flowing through his body. King Tian replies that this energy was always inside him. His body just couldn't handle it before because it hadn't been tempered by the heat. Wondering who would have thought he could unlock a new form of shadow energy, the protagonist notices his wounds are healing. The Minotaur is shocked to see him recovering so quickly. The aura coming from him has become even more sinister than before. It absolutely won't give him time to recover, bringing its weapon down in a powerful strike. Li Yi dodges, leaping backward. Luden thinks that he's keeping up with its tripled speed, which is insane for an E rank. It moves again, declaring it will flood the entire area to see where he'll run. A smile spreads across Lai Yi's face. Luden says it will use its lava to defeat him. but it notices something different as the protagonist remains standing. He wonders if this is the shadow enhancement. He thinks that if the initial level was this useful, he wants to see how powerful the final level will be. Then he says that the great adversary's temperature is too low. The Minotaur says that's impossible. Li Yi comments that it seemed to be enjoying its current form. But now it's his turn as he points his shadow sword at the monster. Luden retreats as the protagonist charges toward it. Li Yi moves his twin daggers and strikes the Minotaur's arm, thanks to his improved shadow enhancement. The Minotaur screams from the impact and calls him a fool. Li Yi defends with his daggers and makes a few moves, thinking he can even deal damage from a distance now. Luden uses the lava on its body, saying it can regenerate infinitely, and that his attacks are useless. The protagonist repeats the words infinite regeneration, but says he isn't so sure about that, since its energy seems to be weakening. The Minotaur swings its twin axes, telling him to try again if he wants to be sure. Li Yi unleashes a flurry of dagger strikes against the Minotaur, which challenges him to keep going. But suddenly, it looks at its hand, trying to figure out what's happening. The protagonist replies that its energy is at its limit and that it would be better to surrender now. Luden asks him to wait a second, claiming there's no real fight between them and no need to go all out. But Li Yi says Miss Qin gave him $1 million to protect her. The Minotaur says money is negotiable, and once they get back to Wrong City, it will give him $5 million. Li Yi says it won't keep its word. It would be worse, as it would just come back with reinforcements to take him down. The Minotaur denies this, saying it's not the type to betray others. Then the protagonist says that this actually reminds him of something. Someone must have lost interest in Miss Qin's father, Qin Shaoshang, and must be interested in saving his daughter instead. That means Li Yi would earn more than $5 million. The Minotaur thinks that if it falls into Shaoshang's hands, it would be better to be defeated here. The organization wouldn't spare its family either. It then says that if that's the case, it must not be dishonored. King Tian wonders how it has a portal fragment from another world. If it's destroyed, the Abyss Beast will lose its connection to the outside world. The gate will close, and everyone will be trapped here forever. The Minotaur screams that he's the one who forced it to do this, but the crystal vanishes from its hand, and the protagonist appears behind it. Li Yi lands a blow on its back, and the Minotaur screams in pain. The protagonist stands on its back as a crystal emerges from within the Minotaur. The young man says he didn't expect to find an energy core before. Maybe it was hidden. This improves his Eye of Shadows to its ultimate form. A tremor shakes the area, and King Tian says the Abyss Beast is collapsing without the support of the Minotaur's energy. At the portal exit, the group members talk about the traitor. Miss Qin asks the protagonist if he wants to join them, since he's so strong. Li Yi replies that he's not looking to join any faction right now, but he would appreciate it if she kept his powers a secret. Qin Shinyi says that in any case, here is his $1 million, and the protagonist thanks her. He then summons the Great Sword, asking if they can appraise an item like this. The woman says the sword has no energy signature, but the material is good. If it's worth anything, he'll get every last cent. Li Yi thanks her and says he'll wait to hear from her. He thinks she seems knowledgeable, and if she knows its value, he'll sell it all to her. But if she's like Boss Ju, even so, $1 million in hand isn't a bad trade. In his bed, he comments that the portal fragment from the other world must be important. King Tian says that if he collects enough of them, he'll reach S level. The protagonist thinks about this as he stares at the fragment. King Tian thinks that for the portal to reappear, it means other people are active, and he needs to recover quickly. Someday they will fight things beyond human understanding. He shouldn't tell this kid now, but instead let him grow first. At a portal guarded by the NG group, the protagonist notes there are 4 guards, one of them a B rank. He thinks they must have assigned many fighters to guard it. Just as he thought with his current strength, there's no way to find out the truth yet. King Tian asks what he plans to do. Li Yi replies that this place is where they hide the truth behind what happened to his parents. He remembers the man delivering the 200,000 compensation from the NG group, telling him he should take the money and sign the accident terms. The director asks if it's enough money, and Li Yi replies that he wants the truth. The man says it was an accident and that all the other miners were affected, but the protagonist denies it. It's impossible. His parents are C-rank evolved and wouldn't have been overcome in that accident. So he asks to be allowed to take a look inside. A guard grabs his collar and says that nothing happens inside the rift zone, and being a C-rank makes no difference. Li Yi explains it was an E-rank zone and the strongest monsters were only that level, so even if they were attacked, they could have retreated safely. The guard gets furious, asking if he's trying to get more money from them and looking for trouble. Ming Donghao, the president of the NG group and an A-rank evolved, appears. He says he had ordered someone to console the families of the deceased and questions if it was the director's idea. Then he hands over more money, saying it's not much, but will help during this difficult time. Li Yi replies that he doesn't want money, only the truth. Dong Hao promises to investigate and give him an answer. The protagonist thinks about how he believed his promise to uncover the truth. He never imagined he'd get a debt instead. King Tian in his guide form says that regardless of race, without strength, one will only be oppressed. Instead of just standing there, it would be better for him to gather more otherworldly crystals. Once he has sovereign power, everything he calls the truth will be resolved. Li Yi asks what he needs to tell him, because if his dark energy isn't detected, he'll remain just a miner. The being says he was just going to take control of his body, but then decides to help him level up, saying that if he has potential, he can take him all the way to S rank. King Tian says that's enough, and if he didn't see talent in him, he wouldn't help him anyway. Lai Yi says he didn't say anything, but he was getting annoyed. Suddenly, the protagonist receives a mission invitation. In the D-rank chemical sector, a man asks why he took so long, and Lai Yi replies that he was far away. An older man calls out to the protagonist, who asks if Uncle Hao is on a mission too. Hao remarks that he's grown so much and that it's been 5 years since his parents' accident. Several C-rank evolved appear and comment that they were expecting someone important, but it was just a minor. The secretary asks them to avoid trouble. Gu Da tells him not to waste time and just brief them on the mission. The secretary replies that it's a D-rank dimensional zone and they must extract 60 kilograms of ice crystal. Li Yi thinks that bringing 4 C-rank evolved fighters to a D-rank zone is overkill. Judging by the hostility coming from these men, they aren't the kind type, and he can sense the presence of another C-rank nearby. A man watches everything on a cell phone, saying that all his targets are there. Then the hunt will begin, revealing himself to be the Blood Panther. Hao asks if the protagonist doesn't need to wear protective gear, but Lai Yi refuses, saying he's an advanced now and can handle the situation. Gu asks if he's an advanced adventurer, noting it's a rare combination. Gu Da tells his third brother to pay attention, as he always talks too much. Hao asks them not to provoke them, and the protagonist replies that he shouldn't worry, as he's not careless. He thinks the vegetation here seems to be deliberately hiding something and gets the feeling that something dangerous is lurking nearby. He can't turn back now. Then something moves beside him. The protagonist thinks the other C-rank seems to have noticed something too and is trying to hide and observe from the shadows, or maybe there's something else. Gu yells at the older man to stop talking and hurry up. Hao says he'll go faster. Li Yi thinks this is the perfect chance to investigate everything in secret, so he asks Uncle Hao to wait a moment while he runs ahead. Gu shouts, asking how a minor can move so fast. He orders them both to stop, but his brother Gu Da says they're abandoning the group to danger. The Blood Panther, perched on a branch, asks where the rest are and if they sense the danger. He says it's fine because if everyone were as naive as those three, the game would be totally boring. Gu-san warns his boss that ever since they entered, he's felt like someone is watching them. Gu Da tells him not to be paranoid as it's just a D-rank mission. His brother says he felt the same thing and that there's a strange smell in the air. He wonders if they should turn back, but Gu Da tells them not to start panicking. Suddenly, they all sense something and quickly retreat, just as Gu is trapped in the Blood Panther's threads. He says the game has just begun, but they already want to leave. Gu Da tells the Blood Panther to let his brother go, saying that whatever he wants can be resolved through conversation. The Panther says the three of them provoked his gang, so there's nothing left to talk about, and he launches an attack with his threads. The brothers watch in disbelief as Gu is defeated. Gu-san charges forward with his fists, yelling that he'll fight to the end, but his hand is already caught in the red threads. His entire body is immobilized, and the Blood Panther simply asks if he considers himself qualified to fight. The threads restrain him and Gu-san is defeated, while Gu Da calls him a monster. The Blood Panther yells for him to run because the hunt is more exciting when the prey is scared. In another part of the forest, Lai Yi suggests Uncle Hao should rest a bit. Hao asks why they left the other evolved behind. The protagonist asks if he has offended anyone recently. His uncle says he's just a minor and couldn't have, but wants to know why he's asking. Li Yi says this mission was a trap and that someone wanted to neutralize all of them in this forgotten land. Hao complains that he's scaring him, and the protagonist says that if he knows anything, he should tell him now. Gu Da appears and accuses him of knowing everything and saying nothing, and that because of him, his brothers were defeated. Lai Yi stands up and says he's not completely useless. At least before being defeated, he came to him to lead the way. Gu Da demands to know what he just said. The protagonist replies that he was about to be defeated. Threads appear near Gu Da's head, and he wonders when that happened. The Blood Panther says he didn't expect a minor to be so interesting. The Supreme Eye of Shadows activates as the protagonist stares him down. Hao calls out to the Blood Panther and begs him to spare them, as they are just minors. The Blood Panther says he might not have known him, but if he hadn't seen something a few days ago, they would never have known it was him. Hao pleads, saying he'll keep the secret forever and won't tell anyone. The Panther says he has always believed in one truth. Launching a red thread in his direction, he says that the only people who can keep secrets are those who have already been silenced. Li Yi furiously charges forward with his dual daggers. The Panther creates threads to block and says he didn't expect a minor to have such good skills, and that he now understands how he managed to defeat Zhu Ting, but he was only good enough to deal with opponents like that as he prepares another thread attack. Li Yi dodges the blow, holding his shadow daggers. He activates the shadow enhancement as the Blood Panther rushes toward him, saying he was close to being defeated and that he would help with that. He strikes several times with his threads, and Lai Yi tries to block. He reflects that even with the shadow enhancement, he still can't defend himself. The Panther launches another attack with his threads, asking if he's still distracted. The protagonist crashes against a wall and tells Uncle Hao to stay back, thinking that close proximity is a huge disadvantage against him and that he needs to change tactics. The Panther tells him not to panic, as both of them will be defeated today. The protagonist activates the Supreme Eye of Shadows, stating that the outcome of the battle isn't decided yet. He then hurls several shadow daggers toward the Panther. The Panther blocks them with his threads and asks if that's all he's got. The protagonist leaps toward him, saying he definitely has more. The Panther says he has a lot of tricks for a minor, but it's still not enough. Attacking several times with his threads, he remarks that the protagonist is just an E rank. Suddenly, someone emerges from the ground and tells the Blood Panther to prepare for defeat. Immobilizing him, the Panther says he thought the newcomer would wait until the end to attack, but it's a shame his own ability is his weakness. Close combat was his domain, and a wide grin spreads across his face. A thread strikes Guda, and he is defeated. The protagonist thinks about how a C rank was defeated just like that. He was weaker than him, so Hao knew he had to escape first. He turned and ran. The Panther sneered, asking if they really thought they could get away. From a distance, the protagonist tended to Hao's wounds, saying he'd find a chance to escape when night fell. Hao told him to go on his own, so he wouldn't be a burden. Li Yi asked what exactly he had done to make the Panther want to stop him. Hao replied that he had discovered the truth about the death of the protagonist's parents. Li Yi was furious and demanded to know what he was talking about. He told Hao to tell him everything right now. The old man said he wasn't sure at first, but now that the Panther had come to confront him, it confirmed that something was wrong with Kui Shi Hao. Before the accident, his father had suspected that he was conducting dangerous experiments in the mining area. He never expected that a few days later, they would meet that fate. Li Yi questioned why he hadn't said anything before. Hao confessed that he was afraid. After all, he was just a miner and couldn't lose his job since he had a family to support. The protagonist dropped him to the ground, asking if he just stood by and let his parents suffer such an injustice. Hao replied that he felt guilty too, but that he had brought this disaster upon himself. The Panther suddenly appeared behind them, surrounded by several red threads. Li Yi was terrified as Hao was finally captured. Hao could only apologize. After the confrontation, Hao asked Li Yi not to hold a grudge against him. The Panther wondered why the boy looked so familiar. He finally realized he was the son of those two C ranks. He lunged forward, yelling that the boy would share his parents' fate. Li Yi rushed forward as well, shouting back, "Only in your dreams." The Panther attacked with his threads, and the protagonist defended himself with his daggers. But one of the strikes hit him in the arm. The Panther questioned how it felt to be hit like that. Li Yi said that his web of threads wasn't invincible. Transforming the shadows into a greatsword, he thought that the moment his opponent attacks, his defense becomes weaker. He made a move and managed to damage the threads slightly. The Panther said that trading blows for blows made him a ruthless kid. Li Yi fell to the ground and wondered if he had already reached his limit. The Panther said he was just bluffing and trying to scare him. He shot his threads, saying that if his opponent weren't just an E rank, he would already be defeated. Then he pinned him to the trees, telling him to come and face him. He questioned if he was still trying to fight back with that look in his eyes. It didn't matter how much resolve an ant showed. To completely break his will, he would tell him the secret. Hao Wu had told him half of the story correctly, but his parents weren't victims of a mining accident. They were defeated by his own hands, which made Li Yi utterly enraged. The Panther said, "That's the look." When his mother was defeated, his father had the exact same expression. He just stood there, watching without reacting as the Panther took down his wife. Then he laughed. Li Yi unleashed his energy, screaming the Panther's name. His opponent noticed that his threads were burning. The protagonist repelled him with his dark energy and called him a demon. He walked forward as King Tian took over his body. Li Yi's expression turned dark as he vowed to stop him. King Tian thought that, as expected, the little one could use his anger to stimulate the dark energy in his body. The system notified him that due to the detected internal shadow energy, his corrected level was now C rank with a level 2 dark enhancement. He could now travel through shadows. The Panther thought that all his wounds had been healed and said it was just like before. Flinging his threads, he said that his interesting prey would be fun to fight to the end. Li Yi smirked, repeating the word prey. He used shadow teleport, saying that as long as shadows exist, the Panther was the real prey. The Panther wondered how the kid's strength had grown so much, admitting his speed was impressive, but it still wasn't enough to defeat him, so he tried another attack with his threads. Li Yi threw his daggers and told him to try it. The Panther parried the weapons, saying that move was useless against him. The protagonist then used shadow teleport to appear near his gear. He then launched a close-range strike to hit the threads, while the Panther claimed it was useless and that he couldn't break his defense. Li Yi vanished from his sight, asking who said he was trying to break his defense. He couldn't deal with both at the same time because the speed at which he controlled the threads didn't match his reaction time. That was his weakness. He struck the Panther several times. He screamed that this was all impossible as he retreated. He then questioned how he could lose to a mere miner. Li Yi asked what really happened in the mine accident back then. The Panther said he would tell him about his mother, but the protagonist made a move and disarmed him. The Panther screamed in pain. Li Yi warned him that his patience was limited. The man asked what he should say since it was all Kui Shi Hao's doing. His father had tried to stop the experiment before. Fearing exposure, Kui Shi Hao had them defeated. Li Yi then called out to the man. The Panther yelled that now that he knew he was from the NG group, he should be afraid or have lost his nerve. He was about to tell him to let him go obediently, but the protagonist made another move, warning that the man who defeated his parents wouldn't let any of them escape. At the NG group's headquarters, the protagonist was sneaking around. He watched Kui Shi Hao get into a car. King Tian warned him that he was now a C rank advanced, but he still needed to remember he was taking a risk. He should be able to sense that there was an A-rank advance nearby. Li Yi said he knew. It was the president of the NG group, Ming Donghao, who was also in the car, but he told him not to worry, as he wouldn't be reckless enough to make a move on Kui Shihao there. Besides, he couldn't completely trust the Panther's words. He would first investigate the matter concerning his parents to find out if Kui Shihao acted alone or if the entire group was involved. It would be better if Ming Donghao wasn't involved. Otherwise, it wouldn't matter if he was an A rank, because a debt must be paid. He thought it was the Black Panther gang's base and wondered what Kui Shihao was doing there in the middle of the night. The Panther told everyone to be careful, as this was all experimental equipment. Shihao asked if the old miner, Hao Wu, had been dealt with. The Panther replied that Blood Panther was currently missing and the portal they used to infiltrate had disappeared, so they couldn't confirm it. Kui Shihao asked what on earth was happening, since Blood Panther was a C rank. The Panther replied that he had probably underestimated the 3 advanced ones. Shihao ordered them to move the equipment quickly to prevent complications from delays, as the experiment was in a critical state. The Panther asked if the money was ready, and Shihao told him not to worry about it. Li Yi seethed, thinking that it really was him. The Panther sensed the hostile intent and shot a burst of fire, asking who was there. Kui Shihao asked what was going on. The Panther wondered if it was just his imagination, as he had clearly felt a wave of hostile intent. Li Yi thought that it was a close call. He was almost discovered, and the strength of a C rank was not enough. At the Qin Group building, Qin Shaoshang's company, Li Yi stood out front. King Tian commented that he didn't seem to be looking for missions this morning and wanted to know what he was doing there. The protagonist said he was there to find the 3rd fragment and to see how much his equipment was worth. A secretary asked if she could help him with anything. Li Yi replied that he was looking for Qin Xian. The secretary asked if he had an appointment. Su King appeared, saying this was no place for a poor miner, who even dared to say the young mistress's name so directly. She told young Master Tian that this kind of person was polluting the air, and he ordered his subordinates to take care of him. Li Yi questioned if this was the hospitality of the 3rd Street men. The young master replied that a person like him didn't even count as a guest and was not worthy of his kin family. Li Yi thought that all these people were arrogant and overbearing, and it seemed he didn't need to contact Qin Xian anymore. He turned, saying that in that case he would leave, but the young master replied that he wasn't going anywhere. He then sent his guards to deal with him. The protagonist uses shadow teleport to neutralize each of the subordinates until he immobilizes young Master Qin. Su King tells him to let the young master go, or the Qin family will never forgive him. Li Yi pushes her away, saying she's too loud. Then he turns to leave, saying he'll let them go today out of respect for Qin Xian. The young master gets up and asks who he thinks he is. He rushes towards him with his fire powers, shouting that he's going to defeat him. Li Yi turns around and the young master prepares to attack, but the man in the mask interrupts the battle, telling them both to stop. Qin Xian says they've caused a big problem and that it was bold to do this in the Qin group's territory. The young master runs to her, saying Li Yi is in trouble for this and now his cousin won't let him go. Qin Xian orders them to take him away, and the young master tries to argue that letting Li off easy is better than punishing him severely. But the guard grabs the young master's shirt. He asks what he's doing since he's her cousin Qin Tang. Su King tells the young miss that he was the miner who said her name directly, and Qin Tang was only holding back his anger for her sake. Qin Xian says he's her friend and there's nothing wrong with him calling her by name. She orders her subordinates to escort these guards and this made out, as they will never be hired again. Su King begs Qin Tang, saying she's his girlfriend and would do anything for him. Qin Xian questions his young master title, as he dared to use her family's name in vain and she won't forgive it. Then she turns to the protagonist, saying she didn't expect him to come and that they should sit for a bit. She's sorry that this member of a branch family caused such a mess, and Li Yi says it's fine, that every family has its bad apples. Qin Xian leads him down a path, and a secretary says the chairman wants to see the young miss. The girl says she's sorry and that her friend should wait a bit as she'll be back soon, and Li Yi says it's no problem. She asks if it's something important, and the secretary replies that he asked her to come immediately. Suddenly, a surge of energy hits the ceiling of the room Li Yi is in. A man approaches, asking who he is. With the supreme eye of shadows, he notes the man is A rank. Li Yi thinks that he has 2 abilities as well. He then asks if there's some misunderstanding, as he's just a miner. He thinks this kind of mental attack is tough, and shadow enhancement is completely useless against it. Qin Shi Wang thinks that the Eye of Deterrence failed to intimidate him. Then he says he fears it's not that simple, releasing more energy. He shoots a beam towards the protagonist. The protagonist blocks it with his shadows, and Tin comments that to be able to do that, he must have at least the strength of a B rank. He then questions his motive for faking his identity to get close to Xian, saying if he doesn't confess honestly, there will be no mercy. But the girl interrupts, speaking to her father as he sent her away just to interrogate her friend. He asks her to forgive her father, and Xian says he has no dignity and should get out of there. Li Yi thinks that this is Qin Shaoshang, the man in charge of 3rd Street. Xian apologizes, as her father always thinks people approach with ulterior motives, and Li Yi says it's fine. She questions how he seems to know so much about her father, and the protagonist says it wasn't hard to figure out. His inner thoughts were being spoken aloud, with the man at the window bad-mouthing the protagonist. Xian yells for her father to get out. A few minutes later, she says there's a 5 million deposit on the card and that the sword's material is special, while the protagonist says he came for another reason. He wants to know if she knows where he can find this kind of thing, showing her the crystal. Cyan says this type of fragment used to be very common, but recently someone seems to be buying them up, so they become rare on the market. She says he should try the company's auction, as he would probably find one there. King Tian wonders if this could be related to those guys and if someone is collecting the fragments. The man in the mask says that Lai Yi was a normal person but was classified as an E-rank ascendant a few days ago due to the lack of energy in his body. Qin Xiao Shang says he went from E-rank to C-rank in a few days, or this kid has been hiding his strength all this time. Then he answers a call asking old Huo what he did today, while the old man asks if he has any of his daughter's longswords. Qin says he's not sure and wants to know what's wrong. So Huo tells him to hurry and ask if there are any left because he'll take them all. Xiao Shang replies that for that old fox to be interested, there must be something special about it. The old man says he won't reveal much, but he'll just say that the sword's material can increase the strength of his entire army. Xiao Shang thinks his strength and identity are a mystery, and even his equipment isn't ordinary. So this Lai Yi is truly impossible to figure out. The protagonist walks around and thinks there are a lot of things here and maybe they really are fragments. Su King approaches Huo and says she had nothing to do with Qin Tang and even quit her job at the corporation. Huo thinks it's that miner and maybe Mr. Blood Panther hasn't made his move yet. He then tells the miner to say how he got in here. Li Yi turns around replying that his memory doesn't seem to be very good, because he must have already forgotten the feeling after their clash a few days ago. Huo Ting tells him not to come any closer until the Panther confronts him from behind. He says that Huo Ting is a disgrace to his Black Panther gang, and Huo calls him Brother Bao. Bao grabs the protagonist's shoulder, saying that confronting his subordinate is the same as confronting his Black Panther gang. Now he must kneel and beg for forgiveness immediately, putting pressure on the young man. Li Yi cracks the floor with the pressure, but says he'd only do that in his dreams. Bao says he didn't expect him to be so tough, and Huo comments that this miner doesn't know his place. Qin Xian interrupts, saying that this is her company's Dragon's Gate and that he's welcome if he's here to spend money. He is welcome if he wants to do that, but if he starts a fight, she'd be happy to stop him. Bao scratches his head and says he'd be happy to grant her that courtesy. Then he tells his subordinates to come to the auction. Qin Xian asks if Lai Yi is okay, and the boy confirms. Bao asks what that kid's background is for his subordinate to end up like that, and Huo Ting says he was the one who took his weapon and challenged the gang. The Panther grabs him by the shirt and asks if he's sure, and Su King confirms as well. Kui Shihao arrives and asks what's wrong. Bao says this kid was one of the Blood Panther's targets last time and wants to know how he's still alive. He wonders if it could be that he defeated the Blood Panther, but Huo Ting says it's impossible, as he's just a mere E-rank. Li Yi activates his Eye of Shadows and turns to Kui Shihao. The director recognizes the boy with all his hostile intent. He wonders if this is the same weak and timid kid from before and wants to know how he got involved with Tai Si. Li Yi asks why Qin Xian came, and the girl says it was because of her father, who suddenly said he wanted to see her friend. The protagonist asks if he's not going to attack him again, and Xian tells him not to worry as he won't dare. Kuai Shihao stands in front of them and says he didn't expect to find him here. Lai Yi replies that he's a minor character forced to work in the mines to pay his debts and can't associate with an executive from the NG group. Shihao says the decision on his relative's case was made by the top executives, and he wanted to help him but was powerless, as his words carried no weight. Li Yi replies that he would certainly absolve himself of all responsibility and knows the truth of the matter. But anyway, Mr. Hao asked him to pass on a message. The truth will come out and he will get what he deserves. Bao says this kid needs to be taught a lesson, and Shihao replies that this is Xiao Shang's territory, so they can't make a move here. But since the boy doesn't know that, they can send someone to take care of him. Bao says he'll arrange it. Xin Yi enters the room and tells her father she's brought her friend. She mentions the auction is about to start and that he can talk with him first, leaving him alone with her father. Lai Yi asks what the chairman needs, and Xiao Shang says he'll get straight to the point. He asks if there are more units of the equipment he sent Xian to sell. The protagonist thinks he seemed to really want the Entropic clan's weapons, but it felt like there was something more to it. It wasn't safe to give them all at once, as it would affect the price. He explains that he came across this equipment by chance and has 2 more. Xiao Shang says that for the 2 new items, he'll offer 40 million, making it a 45 million deal in total, including the last one. He asks for Li Yi's opinion on this. Li Yi says it's not a low price, but he should know that equipment like this is valuable. He suggests a price of 25 million each, leaving the old man surprised. He mutters that this kid is getting on his nerves. Xin Yi then informs him that the item he wants has appeared, so she calls her father, and he says he'll transfer the remaining 70 million to him now. This piece must be what I was looking for. Xiao Shang thinks to himself, frustrated. The announcer says that bidder number 14 offers 7 million, and number 17 offers 10 million. One of the last bidders offers 15 million. The protagonist thinks they really do have the fragment here. The 70 million I have now should be enough to win. He bids 30 million, thinking it will intimidate the other buyers. Bao exclaims that it's Lai Yi and wonders how this kid is bidding on something like this. Kuai Shihao bids 50 million, saying he wants to see how much money this kid has to compete with him. The protagonist immediately bids 60 million. Xiao Shang says it's not enough and tells him not to bid again. Cyan agrees, as the guy is just driving up the price. Li Yi thinks that if Kui Shihao wants the item, he'll fight him for it. Then he asks, wondering aloud who has deeper pockets between the Qin group and the NG group. Xiao Shang says his group does, but asks why he should help him. The protagonist says because I have this, and summons more swords. Xiao Shang says he'll take those two for the previous price, but that money isn't enough to compete. Li Yi replies that naturally there will be more. The old man thinks this kid seems to have more up his sleeve, so he says 70 million this time. Xin Yi asks why her father is being so demanding over such little money, saying that if Lai Yi produces more, he'll pay him back. Then she tells him to hurry, or the other guy will steal his item. The protagonist bids 100 million. Shihao says this thing is of great use for the group's secret project and that he has to get it, bidding 200 million. They keep bidding against each other until the price reaches 500 million. People in the crowd wonder if they've gone mad. Bao says this kid is clearly working against them, and Shihao replies that he's not qualified to do so. Shihao raises his hand and bids 1 billion. The auctioneers exclaim, what an immense amount that is. Xin Yi says the guy is provoking them. Li Yi thinks that's not right. Based on Shihao's personality, he wouldn't waste money on impulse. Xiao Shang tells the kid he'd better think carefully, as the bid is already at 1 billion. He asks how he could possibly get so much equipment. Xin Yi says she'll cover whatever is missing and tells the protagonist to bid quickly. Li Yi raises his paddle and bids 2 billion. The auctioneer announces 2 billion all at once. Bao questions where this kid got so much money. Shihao says it's because of Qin Xiao Shang and becomes furious. The auctioneer bangs the gavel, announcing the final bid is 2 billion, sold to bidder number 9. Xin Yi cheers while the protagonist comments that she's very excited. The girl says she loves seeing bad people get what they deserve. Xiao Shang gets their attention. He comments that it was a fun 2 billion bet. After deducting the previous amount, he still needs to produce 70 weapons. He questions if he can manage that quantity. The protagonist says these things are precious when they're rare, but the price naturally won't be calculated by the previous standard. Li Yi snaps his fingers, saying there are about 100 of them here, which should be enough to cover the 2 billion fee. Xiao Shang says he's a smart young man, thinking his temperament and strength are excellent. It would be good if he worked for him. Xin Yi then calls out to the protagonist. She says that next time he wants to do something fun, he should call her. Xiao Shang thinks it's better if he doesn't and tells her it's time to go home. He informs Lai Yi that he can collect the item he won directly. Li Yi thanks Chairman Qin. Before leaving, Xiao Shang says that he has his methods, but the NG group shouldn't be underestimated. He can't take them down alone. Sometimes you need allies to share your goals. If he's interested, he can contact him. In another room, Bao answers a phone call. He says, yes, I understand. The chairman and his daughter have already left. The only one left to pick up the fragment is the young Li Yi. Shihao says he'll make his move after he leaves the Qin family's sphere of influence. Bao tells him not to worry. This time, he brought 3 advanced C ranks and guarantees it will work. Outside, Li Yi comments that it seemed like Qin Xiao Shang was digging up information on him. That last sentence was clearly an attempt to win him over, but forming an alliance for extra help wasn't a bad idea. Bang Tian says he's just an A rank, and if he gets the fragments, he'll become an S rank. He asks what's with that look, as if he doesn't believe him. The protagonist confirms, but thinks S ranks aren't that rare. There are only 9 in the world. He wonders why the other guy doesn't act like that, and thinks it's better not to say it out loud to avoid provoking him. Li Yi suddenly notices something. His apartment is on fire. People are running towards their homes. The protagonist picks up his phone and answers a call. Xiao Shang warns him that the Panther Gang is going to make a move. Li Yi replies that they already have. He tells him not to worry and that he wants to handle it himself. The person on the phone says they'll bring some people. Huo Ting says he's finally here and that he should hurry up and surrender and he'll spare his life. The protagonist says he really underestimated him, sending them to their own doom. Huo Ting says he'll be the one defeated and that he'll see how a single E rank can fight against 3 C ranks. The protagonist asks if he knows why the Panther Gang can't defeat him. Onlookers comment that he's very confident and might be hiding his strength, but Huo Ting insists he's just a minor. Then a subordinate charges at him, saying that above all, he has no combat skills. He prepares to strike the protagonist's shoulder. Li Yi vanishes with a shadow teleport. He reappears behind his opponent and neutralizes him with a swift move, commenting, just a minor. The crowd asks how he did it and where he came from. Huo Ting orders the other 2 to get him together. The protagonist defeats the other 2 and then immobilizes Huo Ting, saying he was a bully for yelling so loud that he was afraid of a minor. He really liked to push his luck. Huo Ting gets scared and tells Li Yi to let him go. The protagonist throws him away. He keeps shouting that he and Chairman Kuai will give him whatever he wants and that Brother Panther won't let him get away with this. Huo Ting is then engulfed in flames and neutralized. Li Yi says they shouldn't worry as he'll send them to meet him soon. He then meets up with Xin Yi and the masked man. The girl asks if he's okay. The protagonist replies that he's fine and they were just some small fries. Xin Yi asks about his next plan. The protagonist answers that they made the first move and now he's going to strike back. The girl says she'll help him then. The protagonist asks why, and she replies that she's been fed up with the Panther Gang for a long time, and now they've attacked her friend. Then she says he's one of the few friends she has. The protagonist agrees with a smile on his face. Then they walk away, saying they'll start soon. Xin Yi leads the protagonist to a house, telling him he can stay there and pick a room for himself, as people rarely come by. The protagonist says he'll take that one, and the girl says, "Accept that one." Li Yi is surprised, and she yells that he can't go in. He comments that it's very feminine, a room full of stuffed animals and pink things. The protagonist says it looks just like her, and Xin Yi replies that she thought he'd find it childish for the Harris of the Qin Corporation to have things like that. Li Yi says it's normal for girls to like that kind of stuff. She's cuter like this than when she's acting all cold outside, and Xin Yi thinks that no one has ever used that word for her before. Suddenly, her stomach growls. The protagonist laughs, and she asks why he's laughing. She says if she had been so worried about him being in danger, she wouldn't be hungry right now. Li Yi summons some food and tells her to eat, saying he prepared it for emergencies. Xin Yi asks where he conjured the food from, adding she was wondering at the auction where he got his weapons. The protagonist replies that he knows magic, and she begs him to teach her. Suddenly, Li Yi realizes something. He asks if she can go home first, and she asks what's wrong. The protagonist replies that if she doesn't go back now, her father will be furious with him. The girl then angrily calls out Qin Shaoshang's name. Later, Li Yi closes the bedroom curtains, saying this is Qin Corporation territory and no one will bother them now. He thinks about the piece from the Water Minotaur, one from the Panther, and one from the auction, then announces they're about to begin. But he's curious, wanting to know the connection between these fragments and the dimensional portals that appear in the air. King Tian explains that, to be precise, these 3 fragments are a small part of the gate to an alternate prison, and all dimensional portals are related to it. He then decides they should enter, and Li Yi asks him to explain exactly what an alternate dimension is. He wants to know how so many insects and beastmen end up there, despite it being a desert. King Tian replies that they are all prisoners, and what he calls an alternate dimension is actually a massive interdimensional prison. Li Yi asks about the prison and the prisoners. The spirit says that to get more answers, he must find them himself by completing tests. The protagonist then notices the place. King Tian says it's the tower that reaches the sky, his most satisfying work of art, and also the protagonist's training ground. Li Yi wonders about its aesthetic, thinking Xiao Shang would want to buy it, and that it must be worth a lot. King Tian thinks to himself that his soul is on the line. They enter, and the protagonist asks what the test entails. The spirit replies that there are 6 floors in total, and with his current strength, it would be impressive if he could even beat the first one. The protagonist asks about the Shadow Wyvern and wonders if that thing is it. He can't feel any sense of pressure coming from it. It's a cute lizard. The protagonist asks if it isn't just a gecko. Li Yi asks if fighting something like this isn't just picking on the weak. King Tian tells him to go ahead and laugh, because he won't be laughing for long. The protagonist approaches to pet it. Suddenly, dark energy fills the area, and the lizard's eye begins to glow. An immense dragon-shaped energy strikes the protagonist, knocking him back. He stumbles back for a few seconds before coming face to face with the creature. It's the Shadow Clan Wyvern with the Dark Enhancement, which improves its speed and strength by 600% and also marks its weaknesses. Li Yi is shocked, saying it's 3 times better than his own Dark Enhancement. King Shin explains it's because his constitution is inferior. The Wyvern charges at the protagonist, who questions it, thinking it was just playing around. He leaps onto the creature, saying it doesn't understand the principle that the larger the body, the more blind spots it has. He throws several shadow daggers at the creature's back, but the daggers don't even damage its wings. Li Yi is surprised and asks how strong the Dark Enhancement's defense is. King Shin asks if he's still holding back. The protagonist creates larger daggers with the Dark Enhancement. King Shin says that if he doesn't, he won't pass the first floor test. Li Yi lands several blows on the wyvern's body with his weapons. He questions how the creature is completely unharmed after his attacks. The protagonist thinks its use of Dark Enhancement and shadows is too refined, and he needs to push himself harder. King Shin says his pet must be hungry too, and that this thing is edible. Then the monster lunges to attack the protagonist. Li Yi dodges, and the wyvern glares at him with even greater hunger. The protagonist asks if his pet has had its shots because it looks rabid. King Shin says it probably sees him as food to replenish its energy. Li Yi says it doesn't seem to be playing around. A fight is fine, but he wants to know why it's attacking. But since it's hungry, he should try this. He throws food while declaring this is his final move. The wyvern watches the chicken leg floating in front of it. It then grabs one while flying and goes after the others. Li Yi says he was right and that it's delicious. He then traps it with his shadow rope. He declares it a success, and the system announces that he has tamed the shadow beast and earned the right to access the first floor. King Shin calls him a glutton. The system states that he has obtained the bond and authority activation for the alternate prison portal. Li Yi asks what these abilities are for. King Shin replies that after replenishing their energy, each fragment will become a portal connected to the alternate prison. The protagonist deduces he can now go whenever he wants. The protagonist says that getting a good skill on the first floor means the rewards for the next 5 will be even better. King Shin thinks that he's getting excited just from passing the first floor. In that case, he'll let him go to the second floor to suffer a bit. He then tells him to give it a try, saying that in any case, the guards are merely servants of the tower. Li Yi thinks he has a bad feeling about this guy, but he notes that the beast on the first floor was already C rank, so the one on the second floor won't be so simple. King Shin says that if he doesn't believe him, he should take a look first before deciding. It's not dangerous anyway. He comes face to face with a gate. The protagonist opens the door and is stunned. There are 3 monsters, a thunder serpent king, an aquatic turtle, and a lava minotaur, all C rank. The protagonist asks if he calls all of these servants. Facing all the creatures, the protagonist covers himself in dark energy. He leaps off the ground, dodging a strike from the serpent. He then looks back, thinking that the entrance is now sealed as well. The beasts roar that they will stop the intruder. The protagonist uses shadow teleport to move high up, activating his enhancement as the other beasts charge toward him. He moves between the creatures, leaving a trail of shadow. He then hides behind a pillar and closes the room's door. Lee closes the door and says he did it on purpose, accusing him of lying about them just being his servants. Kingshin says he didn't lie. They are all his servants. It's just that the protagonist's skills are poor. The protagonist asks about the task of each monster, and the ruler responds. Suddenly, the system notifies them that an A-rank life form is approaching. He wonders why they're coming at a time like this. Xiao Shang sits down and says he heard from his daughter that he wants to deal with the Black Panther gang. Lai Yi confirms, explaining that since the Black Panther gang started by targeting him, it's better to take the initiative and attack rather than passively defend. The Qin family leader says he had been repeatedly provoking their group but hadn't made a move yet. Lai Yi asks if he was afraid of upsetting the balance. The old man confirms this. The 3 great powers of Haicheng were in a state of mutual balance, with Wu Tianshu controlling the police and the NG group controlling the economy. As someone who has a hand in both, he detests the Panther gang for their actions against the merchants. But unless they go too far, he can't act. Because moving against the Panther gang could lead Ning Donghao and Wu Tianshu to form an alliance, or give them an opportunity to take control of all of Haicheng. Li Yi says that means President Qin doesn't want his family involved in this fight. He sighs with a smile on his face. He denies it, saying he wants him and Si Yin to form a new faction to deal with the Black Panther gang. The protagonist asks if he's trying to start a war. Xiao Shang agrees. He'll provide the money and power, so the 2 of them can create and execute the plan. That way, even if they fail, he can ensure their safety and mediate. Lai Yi says he didn't expect the president to come up with a plan in just one night and is impressed. The old man says that if his daughter wasn't so insistent, he wouldn't have bothered, and starts muttering about the protagonist. The young man thinks that President Qin shouldn't let his inner thoughts be so obvious. Si Yin then pushes her father out of the room. Then she asks what her friend was planning to do next. Li Yi replies that he's going to accept missions for all accessible dimensional portals, as he needs to visit every single one in Haicheng. Si Yin says that's fine and she'll make the arrangements. The protagonist thinks that he has already gathered the fragments, and it's about to be a bad time for the Black Panther gang. Outside, she says these are the people she chose, and they are now members of the Shadow Gang. Li Yi questions the name. They all greet the young miss and the boss. Si Yin says he took too long to pick a name, so she named it according to his abilities. The protagonist replies that it's a good name. Activating his Shadow Eye, he thinks that they are all C rank, a considerable force anywhere, but he asks why they are wearing masks. She says it's so their identities can't be used against them. Besides, it looked cool. Li Yi wonders if the head artist was just too lazy to draw so many faces. She wants to know his next move. The protagonist replies that he's going to take their jobs. He's going to take on every mission that was picked up by the Black Panther gang. The girl replies that it's a lot of jobs and asks if he can handle them all. Li Yi says it's fine. He's only going to take the valuable ones, as he has other plans for the rest. Elsewhere, Bao throws papers in his secretary's face, calling him useless for letting a new group like the Shadow Gang steal all their missions. He demands to know what he's going to do about it. If they're looking for trouble, he should send people to take care of it. The secretary says they can't do that. Bao grabs him by the shirt and asks what he means. The secretary explains that no matter the mission, they can dispatch 5 or 6 C-rank advanced members. They don't have enough personnel, and the Panther wonders where this group came from. He throws him away, saying they spend money to buy exploration slots, and he must send people to find their target. The targets for the expedition had been taken by several unidentified people. Bao unleashes his energy, saying he doesn't care if he has to steal or pay a high price. He must get his people, and if he misses this opportunity, he will take responsibility. Back at the house, Si Yin answers a call and says she understands. She then says the Panther gang paid a high price for the exploration slots they were holding. She asks how he could be so sure they would buy them. The protagonist replies it's because they wouldn't give up on the season's opportunity. Si Yin says she doesn't understand. Li Yi explains that it involves some unwritten rules of the mining fields. To make more money, the supervisors and managers all hid high-level materials to get the best equipment. In the past, the Panther gang would accept missions from the mercenary guild to set up their robbery targets. Since they were good at illicit things, no one would report them to the authorities even if they were robbed. Now that their usual path is cut off, they'll pay the higher price. Si Yin says that even if they sell the slots at a high price, they'll just make a little more money. The protagonist confirms, but says there's more to it. His recent trips to all those alternate dimensions weren't for nothing. Si Yin asks if it was an entrance to the portal. The protagonist replies that he has marked all the entrances in Haicheng and can open them at any time. Now they just need people to closely watch who bought the high-priced slots and identify the Black Panther's targets. Si Yin says it's a great idea. Li Yi replies that he doesn't want too many people to know about the entrance, and they should only take trusted people. The girl says she wants to go too, as she loves this kind of heroic and righteous work. The protagonist smiles, saying that they will then finish this dungeon together. A truck drives by, and an old man says this equipment is really worth a lot of money. Old man Wang tells him not to worry, as he'll get his share. Driving towards a rock, he says that on behalf of everyone, he is grateful. Wang tells him to pay attention, and the man asks what's happening. Several spikes grow out of the ground, and the car starts to swerve to avoid them. In the back, everyone holding the cargo trembles. Suddenly, the truck crashes into a wall. Wang gets out, asking what happened and if the cargo is okay. A man with a mohawk says the cargo is definitely fine, but they would all be in trouble soon, as he creates several spikes with his ability. The miners scream, realizing they're up against an advanced user, and start running. The man tells them not to run, as he hasn't had his fun yet, but the protagonist appears and says he'll take care of him first. Using his shadow teleport, he appears behind him. The man asks who dares to ruin his fun. The protagonist moves forward, saying that robbing people is one thing. That ascendant retreats, thinking he's too fast. The protagonist grabs him and says that acting so carelessly isn't good. With a swift move, he neutralizes him against the wall. The ascendant asks who he is, suggesting it would be wise not to make a move, or else his brothers won't let him go. Lee asks if he's talking about these D-rank guys who have already been defeated by his squad. The man shouts, asking what this is. Si Yin asks what they should do with those people. The protagonist says no, explaining that defeating them now would let the Black Panther gang off too easily, and that he has a better plan. The man groans in pain. The protagonist tells him to go back and tell the Black Panther that Lai Yi's shadow gang did all of this. Days later at the hospital, Bao screams their names. He wants to know how their opponent suddenly became so powerful. His secretary says that although the men didn't seem badly injured on the surface, they actually had serious internal injuries and would take a long time to recover. It would cost no less than 5 million per person, totaling 30 million for the 6 of them. Then a message arrives. He then reports that their other 2 teams have also failed. Bao questions this. He asks who did it, and the secretary says it was Lai Yi. Bao questions how that's even possible. There were 3 alternate dimensions, and even if Lai Yi could fly, he couldn't appear in all of them at the same time. The secretary says it's true, but it really was Li Yi who did it all by himself, and his men secretly recorded a video. They watch as they are all defeated and thrown into disarray in the dimension. The protagonist turns to the camera and asks if they're secretly filming. Then he tells the Panther that he knows his subordinates are weak, and he should come and face him personally. It would cost a fortune to treat so many subordinates for half a year to a full year. Bao becomes enraged. He says he's going to settle the score with that guy right now, and then smashes his phone. In a warehouse, Si Yin asks why they came to this place. The protagonist says that when he was dealing with Kui Shi Hao before, he accidentally discovered the Black Panther gang and bets Bao himself will lead the team. Xin Yi asks if he plans to raid the warehouse while the Panther is away, and the protagonist confirms. He then grabs his phone and answers. Someone on the other end says the Panther and his men have already left Dimension Number 3. The protagonist tells them to keep an eye on them. Li says the Panther was leading the team himself. To make sure nothing went wrong, he was going to buy some time. The girl says he's a B rank and has Duan to go with him, but the protagonist replies that it's not necessary. He isn't going to fight them, and bringing Duan along would just be an inconvenience. The girl tries to argue. The protagonist tells her not to worry. Even if he's in danger, he'll use the portal to return quickly. Si Yi asks him to be careful. Inside the portal, everyone comments that they got only good stuff this time and struck it rich. A subordinate says their boss is the best, and ever since he made his move, Li Yi and his group haven't even shown their faces. Bao says he was a mere miner. Even with a few C-rank helpers, no kind of trick could last forever. But he suddenly senses something and turns around, asking who's there. Li Yi creates a shadow around his subordinate's neck. He says that the perception of a B rank is truly impressive, and Bao calls out his name. Lai Yi asks why he's so tense, since he's just a small-time miner. The blonde man begs for his boss to save him, and the protagonist warns him not to move, as he can't guarantee his safety. Bao casts a spell and says they can be defeated together. The fire hits the subordinate, who is neutralized with a scream. Li Yi uses the shadow teleport, saying he didn't even spare his own men and was truly an incredible boss. Bao turns, throwing another fireball, saying that this rat was hiding. But he notices something different, as a subordinate says that Brother Panther missed. Li questions if his subordinates aren't in a high-risk job, and one of them asks Brother Panther not to be reckless. Bao says that as long as he can defeat him, he doesn't care about losing his men. He yells that he'll see where he hides this time and creates a fire tornado. The subordinates run, screaming in denial as the protagonist watches from a distance. They are hit by the flames and scatter, fleeing the confrontation. Li Yi uses a shadow teleport to get behind a rock to hide. Bao unleashes more fire, shouting the protagonist's name and telling him to come out, since all he knows is how to hide. The protagonist thinks that he can't underestimate a B rank and that it's time to leave. Then he says he can just imagine the look on his face when he gets back. Back at his warehouse, Bao demands to know what in the world happened. A man says it was the Shadow Gang and the young Miss of the Kin family. Another guy says they brought 2 B ranks and dozens of C ranks. Bao yells that there was nothing they could do and that this was just great, while his subordinate begs to be spared. But his body is engulfed in flames and he is then neutralized. Bao says it's no wonder Li Yi has so many assistants. and that this was Qin Sinyi's fault. He then says they shouldn't blame him for being so rude this time. Elsewhere, Kui Shi Hao says this matter ends here. Bao asks how, since everything he had was worth hundreds of millions. Xiao asks what he can do, and if he should send some men to start a war with the Qin family. Even if Qin Shaoshang is temporarily out of Haicheng, Qin Si Yin is still not someone he can touch. This was a critical moment for his experiment. No matter how great his loss, he would endure it for now. Bao replies that he can't wait a second longer. The worst that can happen is he defeats Qin Si Yin and Li Yi, and then leaves Haicheng. But he suddenly feels something strange. Shi Hao says that if he insists on seeking his own defeat, he will stop him now, unleashing several monsters in front of him and revealing his power.